In the great debate of true meanings hidden within classic films, there are almost none that remain as debated as David Fincher's 1999 opera of anarchy, Fight Club.
I want you to hit me as hard as you can.
Of course, the film is no stranger to being analyzed and deconstructed by its many adoring fans, as the movie and the novel both have garnered audiences that, like the narrator, won't sleep until they find the satisfaction and meaning that they need. With its many subtexts, there are endless possibilities as to what writer Chuck Palahniuk may have intended to say with his story of mayhem and madness. It's a movie that calls into question the idea of masculinity, mental health, moral fiber, and even the meaning of life. Yet, in the 25 years since the book's initial release, there have been a multitude of other theories and hidden meanings found through the story's loyal fanbase. And as we know, the message doesn't have to be intended to be real and meaningful. Now, as is the case with any video here on the World Wide Web, this video is strictly our take on Fight Club, and we would love to read your theories and comments down below.
That's me. I could be wrong.
And while we're on the topic, this movie has dozens upon dozens of different Easter eggs and theories attached to it, as well as dozens more that have emerged since the 2 comic book sequels that have been released in the years since. So we definitely will not get around to mentioning everything, but the goal, as usual, is to put this movie under the JoBlo microscope and see if we can extract some evidence to determine once and for all, what's Fight Club really about? Fight Club is the story of a 30-year-old man with chronic insomnia who discovers that he can only get a good night's sleep when he attends various support groups for individuals with real problems like cancer, addiction, and grief. The emotional weight of it all makes him cry, and as a result, makes him sleep. When Marla, a woman with her own need for a good cry, starts attending the same groups, our protagonist must find an alternate way to get the help that he needs.
And this is how I met
Tyler Durden.
Our protagonist then meets Tyler Durden, played by Brad Pitt, a confident, charismatic, and seemingly liberated soap salesman who befriends our protagonist when the pair decide to start a club for men to gather and beat the living shit out of each other, which, of course, helps our guy sleep like a baby. By the way, the main character, who is played by Edward Norton, doesn't have a set name in the script. It's unclear who he really is until the film's final act, so for this video, I'm going to be calling him Cornelius, one of his aliases.
Doesn't have your name. Who are you?
But when Tyler's Fight Club begins growing into a cult of domestic social terrorists, the story will turn itself upside down as Cornelius learns the shocking truth behind the violent support group that he helped create. Now, I'll definitely be getting into spoilers here, so an official JoBlo spoiler warning for those that have not seen the movie. And trust me, it's a twist that you do not want me to ruin.
And that goes back to the Cacophony Society, because Cacophony was basically an organization of people who had really boring jobs. They were letter carriers for the post office, they were bookstore clerks at Powell's, they were people who had really, very structured hourly job lives. And they needed a way to have chaos in their lives for a very structured, window of time. If we do this kind of a theme party, we can be crazy, we can be insane anarchists from 4 o'clock until midnight on Saturday night. And so it was a way of having completely structured chaos in your life and being able to schedule that every week.
So, to start us off with the most popular and closest confirmed theory, Fight Club is largely believed to be about the idea of masculinity. Some see the movie's obsession with what it means to be a man in modern society as a tongue-in-cheek satire from the author, which essentially deconstructs the concept of alpha male culture. And this thought, of course, is supported heavily by the film's dialogue, which features Tyler talking down on society's concepts of manliness, as well as Cornelius attending a support group for men with testicular cancer, effectively commenting on how society has neutered its men.
trying to look like how Calvin Klein or Tommy Hilfiger said they should.
That what a man looks like?
Now listen, there are so many other lines and hidden Easter eggs that confirm this theory, but what does it all mean? See, Tyler's agenda is really simple. He wants to liberate society from the influence of advertising, media, consumerism, and social norms and essentially create chaos. Why? Well, that's the interesting part. Tyler is a very candid character who says whatever he wants, but never says anything he doesn't mean. And early on in the film, Tyler explains his philosophy to Cornelius, stating that only when a man loses everything is he free to do anything. His goal is to strip the world of its established order to create true equality for everyone and force a more primal way of life. Tyler seemingly likes but doesn't exactly respect Cornelius throughout the movie's unfolding events. He's there as a friend to have fun and carry out his plan, but when it comes to the way he sees Cornelius, he doesn't think of him as anything more than a useful tool. If Tyler doesn't look at Cornelius as a man because of his IKEA furniture and Calvin Klein underwear, then Tyler represents the idea that a man needs to be unconcerned with anything other than absolute freedom, and that things like a yin-yang living room table and Starbucks coffee make you less of a man.
I don't think it's a proclamation like that, but I think it's an examination of why men feel...
But there are a lot of frustrated men.
Yes,
around.
Sure,
yes.
and it is
White
true.
males.
It is true we are in PC times where you don't yell, you don't fight, and yes, this possibly is the more evolved place, but you have to experience the other to get there, and that you can't just skip that step and go straight to, well, I don't fight, I don't argue.
All right, I'm 46. We definitely had fights in the schoolyard when I was coming up. You guys are a little younger. Did you have people
And would you
that
say
had-
they were innocuous at this point? I mean, this is before people whipping out guns, but
Right.
would you say, for me, it was innocuous? I mean, it's just part of the rite of passage in a sense.
Maybe the point of all of this is to symbolize how societal pressure can make you lose touch with your own core identity, or maybe Cornelius deciding to kill Tyler at the end of the film means that the whole movie is actually mocking those who give in to the toxic nature of Tyler's mentality.
Sir, the first rule of Project Mayhem is you do not ask questions, sir.
If we look into the members of Fight Club, or even better, the Space Monkeys from Project Mayhem, they're all men who blindly follow Tyler's direction without asking questions or offering original opinions. They're mindless and they're treated as such. Tyler doesn't respect his following because they're committing the same, quote, unmanly behavior of falling for something because it catches their attention, just like an advertisement, which Tyler is against.
Fuck Martha Stewart.
So does this movie have objective hints that deal with the topic of toxic and fragile masculinity? Yes. And does that mean that the author is mocking or advocating for it? Well, personally, I think if it takes getting your ass kicked in a disgusting basement to be considered a man, then color me a little
There's so many different aspects to it. And one is just, my classic thing is that there are so few social model novels or stories for men. For women, there are, every season, there's a new Joy Luck Club, a new How to Make an American Quilt, a new Traveling Sisterhood of the Yayaha Pants, whatever. Just all these different models in which women can come together and talk about their lives. And if you're a man, you've got either Fight Club or you have the Dead Poet Society. And that is really it. So we don't have a lot of narratives that depict to men a role or a kind of script of, in which to come together and talk about their shed. Another thing is Jordan Peterson, back to Jordan Peterson. He talks about that need for really rough play. And he talks about it a lot. And a lot of my friends, they brag about how badly their kids hurt them. Oh my gosh, my daughter came at me the other day. I had no idea how strong she was. She pulled my arm out of the socket, and they're proud.
So let's talk about some of the other potential hidden meanings in Fight Club. The soap. Tyler's recipe for soap includes using human fat. It's a popular belief that the soap represents people's false expectation that an expensive bar of soap will make them more clean and more pure. Obviously, it will do no such thing, and all they're really doing is
Selling rich women their own fat asses back to them.
Cornelius's spirit animal is a penguin. This is discovered at one of his support groups early on, where he's meant to find his inner peace. The penguin happens to be a flightless bird, and it's trapped inside a cave made of ice. I think it's safe to say that this can be simplified down to Cornelius feeling like there's no escape from his cold life. despite wanting to fly away. There's also a huge Starbucks cup conspiracy where there's supposedly a cup of coffee with the Starbucks logo hidden in almost every scene. Obviously, this one is simple. It not only represents consumerism's vast reach, but it also ironically shows that this anti-establishment movie must have had millions of dollars of Starbucks' money for advertising.
We now had corporate sponsorship.
Now, the second act of the movie follows the growth of Fight Club and the ongoing toxic relationship that Tyler has with Marla. Marla is an interesting character. She's essentially the love interest of the piece, although Cornelius thinks he isn't into her, but she's got layers just as much as anyone else in this weird-ass movie. Marla starts going to groups because, well, as she says,
It's cheaper than a movie and there's free coffee.
Now look.
But really, Marla is seeking more than morbid, bleak entertainment. She's looking for understanding. Marla is clearly unwell. She's morally skewed, unkempt, and suicidal at some point. But she's also loyal, empathetic, and comforting in a way that Cornelius can't seem to resist. If we look at what Marla actually brings to the movie, we can see that she adds romance, common ground, perspective, and a device for Cornelius to eventually learn that he's not just a friend of Tyler Durden. He is Tyler Durden.
Is that a pretty accurate description of our relationship, Tyler?
We have just lost cabin pressure.
Marla's dynamic with Cornelius throughout the movie seems honest and genuine. There's never a moment where Marla seems to be intimidated or even really impressed by Cornelius. But when Marla is with Tyler, she's way more unhinged, less deep, and more manic. And because of this, I think that Marla doesn't exist.
Oh, here comes an avalanche of bullshit.
A little more faith than that.
Hang on, I know in the comic book sequels of the story they have Cornelius and Marla married with a child, and that would suggest that she is 100% real, but I'm not including the sequel's lore or story expansion as it's not exactly related to the movie, and even if it was, we already know how unreliable of a narrator we're dealing with here.
I just can't win with you, can I?
My theory is that while Tyler represents the rebellious, self-assured, and increasingly dominant side of Cornelius, I believe that Marla represents the more feminine tendencies that he's constantly pushing away. You're probably asking, why do I think this? Well, Tyler himself says, quote,
We're a generation of men raised by women.
which would imply that Cornelius's mother was the one who raised him, which is also confirmed when Cornelius mentions that his dad left him at an early age. And it's therefore safe to assume that Cornelius at least has some kind of softer side to him. Somewhere.
I fight Gandhi.
Good answer.
Also, we never really see Marla interact with anyone whenever Cornelius isn't there. We never even see her speak to anyone if she isn't in the presence of Tyler or Cornelius. And it really makes you begin to wonder if the reason that Cornelius first saw Marla was at a support group because that's where he would go to cry, thus being more in touch with his emotional and quote, feminine side, aka Marla. So my theory, Tyler is one side of his personality, Marla is the other side.
You love me, you hate me. You show me a sensitive side, then you turn into a total asshole.
Well, this is what where the book springboards from, saying that we are all spectators. We don't participate anymore. We sit behind our TV screens and our leather sofas and don't get in there. And the expression of the book that I was really drawn to was not about getting out in aggression, was not about pounding the other guy. Mm-hmm. It was more about getting in the machine and receiving.
Now, I've seen this movie many times, and I rewatched it a couple more while doing research for this video. And at one point, a theory crept into my head, and I haven't been able to get rid of it. It's a thought that, if it's true, flips the movie onto its head once again and introduces a whole new meaning. What if Fight Club is really about the fear of death?
Well, I gotta tell you, I'd be very, very careful who you talk to about that.
Listen, every year I get older and older, and every year I get more and more afraid of the multitude of ways that my body could kill me. Suddenly everything hurts, and there's this anxiety that any minor discomfort to my body could be my end-all be-all demise. And Cornelius is afraid of death, that's a given. He's a little depressed and gets the occasional call to the void, sure, but he also finds comfort in being vulnerable with people who are actually facing the one thing that he fears: dying.
No, we're all dying, right? But you're not dying the way Chloe back there's dying.
So?
If this were the case, maybe Tyler represents the more devil-may-care youthful attitude that we have when we're young and alive, and Marla represents the depression and decay of what that can do to a person.
She's infectious human waste! Good luck trying to save her!
This would make Cornelius's decision to kill Tyler at the end represent his decision to seek help for his depression and anxiety. The movie deals with death in a very interesting way. Like when Bob dies as a casualty of mischief gone wrong, Cornelius is destroyed by it. It's as if he's confronting the reality of death for the very first time, which also happens to be the exact moment that he decides to confront Tyler. Coincidence? You decide.
There's always that.
For some, Fight Club is a good movie because on the surface it rejects societal norms and the pressure of herd mentality. But deeper down, it's a deconstruction of the hyper-masculine and dangerous behavior of living above society's rules. While it's filled with meaning and symbolism, Fight Club is a story that leaves the audience to draw whatever they want from it. I heard once that art says more about the interpreter than it does about the artist, and in this case, I think that's true. You can watch this movie 100 times and you might get 100 different ideas about what it really means. But for me, it means something different the older and more mature I get, and I'm sure that it's similar for many of you. But regardless, we at JoBlo know one thing for 100% sure.
You're not your fucking khakis.
Thank you for visiting JoBlo. Please make sure you drop a like on the video, as well as leave us a comment letting us know your theory on the meaning of this iconic movie. And we will see you in the next one.